going to be epic. Balance the sound design as well. But this is, yeah, hi everybody. This is the newest intro, which I'm not going to, or will I? Okay, let's take a quick peek. And that's it, nothing more. You'll have to wait for the next video to come up with the new intro. Okay, but before we'll use a new intro in the new videos and this entire channel will go forward, let's enjoy our good old intro one more time before the end. I'm really proud of this. But before we will jump into full manual mode explanation and all that stuff, I wanted to show you the advanced control of the exposure in your photos. Because if you want to enter the full manual realm without the hesitation and the fear of well-exposed photos, we need to first understand the basic principles of exposing your photos. With your camera, there is an exposure compensation meter. For me, it's down on this display. For you, it could be inside a viewfinder if you have a mirrorless camera, or it can be on this screen in the full manual mode. No one is going to do that exposure evaluation for you. It will show you how well is exposed the point you are focusing on. If you are taking a picture and you are outside, there is a nice sunset and you are focusing on a rock that's in the foreground or something that's in the foreground, you have really high intensity light coming from the horizon and the rock is in the shadows, in the real dark shadows. If you will turn on your histogram of the picture, it will show you that there is plenty of dark parts on the picture and the light is really maybe diminished. So if you want to figure out how to work around this, if you are taking a picture and you want every part to be exposed correctly, focus on the thing you are taking picture of and then expose that correctly first. Then aim towards the most brightest point in that area of that picture and see where the exposure compensator will go. If it will go to the infinity, you know that that part will be overexposed on your picture and you do not even have to see the histogram. So focus on that brightest point and see if you cannot tone that a bit down. And then aim towards that dark spot or the thing that you were focusing before again and see where that exposure is now. You have to trade whether you will have overexposed background, but you will have light in your subject's face, or whether you will have correctly exposed the brightest parts of the picture and you will lose the light in the dark parts. That's really hard stuff when you are taking pictures of places towards the light. If you're lighting the place from behind you, you can increase the light in the shadows, increase the dark in those shadows. You can put all the things all around you and really manipulate the light around you. Or whether you are taking a picture of a flower on the ground during the bright day, you don't have to really care about whether that picture, if you expose it correctly, whether it will have some really dark places because the light is above you, is shining directly onto that flower and it will be correctly exposed whatsoever. But this works if you are facing the light, if you are facing the strong light. You have to always, for once, when you're taking that picture, aim towards that brightest point. Most of the time that's the sun. And see how well is exposed the sun. If it's out of the bounds, if it's to the most right point of that exposure meter, you know that that will be blown out afterwards. So you have to tone the exposure a little bit down by reducing ISO, maybe increasing the shutter speed. But yeah, I'm talking about manual control of your camera and we haven't yet discussed the manual. Just humor me for now. So if you have that overexposed, increase the shutter speed or decrease the ISO. If you will face the sun and you will check the exposure on that sun and it will correctly expose the sun, you know that everything else will be dark because you are shooting against the sun, against that brightest point in the picture, and you will most of the time get silhouettes. It's not even it's hard to believe that the camera is recording. Never mind. Okay, everything was recorded, that's good. Okay, so if you will look at the histogram, if you turn on that histogram and you're wondering what does that histogram means, you have your low tones, you have your mid tones, and you have your highlights. And that thing should go throughout that histogram, like in the axis. It should not reach over one or the other side. Because if you are reaching over this area, you have really dark spots on your picture that you won't be able to take textures back from. And if you have reached this area of that histogram, you will blown out those parts of the pictures. So you know that those lights and those whites on that picture, you won't be able to take them back. And lost data on the photos, that's the worst that can happen for a photographer, right? So you're really trying to maintain those mountains inside a histogram, you know? So remember, you have your shadows, midtones, and highlights. You're trying to keep those mountains within the bounds, and you do not want to reach beneath the darkest point in the histogram, and you are also not trying to reach beyond the brightest point in the histogram, because the histogram is really telling you what's the dynamic range of the sensor within those given settings. And it's really the darkest and the brightest point that the sensor is still capable of capturing data from. So if you'll reach beyond those limits, those places just will be white and nothing will be there. And if you will reach below, those places will be just dark and nothing will be in them. So yeah, really try to dance around within these edges, because if you will somehow replace the quality of the sensor within that given second, the histogram could possibly increase in the width, and those lost details beyond the darkest point or beyond the brightest point, it will increase the bandwidth, because there are data in the real physics of the world, there are data, but the sensor is just not able to reach beyond that limit and capture even darker parts or even brighter parts. So that's really those are your given boundaries of the sensor. I always use the exposure compensator. It's more complicated than using just a histogram, because if you will face one scene and read only the histogram will tell you whether you have too many bright points in your picture or you have too many dark points. You know, if those mountains will be really high and really dense in the dark parts, you know that you have too many dark points in your scene, and you could try increasing the light in those dark areas and vice versa, right? So you have your shadows, you have your midtones, and you have your highlights. Trying to maintain even mountains within those bounds, because that's the data you have captured on your photo. And if you have, maybe that histogram is doing that cut at the very end of the histogram, that means that there are data beyond the capabilities of your sensor. So in this week's episode, we discussed how to control the exposure on your photos in an advanced way. We discussed how to know whether your dark on the highlight parts of the picture will be exposed correctly, right? So you will have the details in them. We discussed the histogram, and that's pretty much all the basics you need before we'll jump into the full manual mode, because I have prepared something really epic. But you'll have to wait for that, because that needs a little bit more preparing, a little bit more cutting, sound design, soundtrack, and etc. But it will be all worth it. So I will try to bring not tomorrow, but the next week, something else for the Teach Tuesday, because I have a lot of ideas and I'm still writing them down, but it's getting much and much more easier, because I'm finding out how to do stuff better and better, and now I'm having the confidence of having a relaxed conversation with the camera, yeah, because there's no one else in the room. And I really thank you all for the attention you are giving me. I will see you in the next video, and until that time, stay creative. I'm not holding it. It's falling, it's not holding. Okay. Yeah. this could hold.